FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry, Lutz, and the date is Wednesday, June 17th, 2015. It looks like it's coming down to it, folks. Greek default, well, it's already happened. We all know it's happened, but nobody wants to admit that it's happened. The Bernie economy is live and well. There's only 2 markets left. Here to talk about them, Andrew Hoffman. Andy, how are you?
Good. Well, you probably either subliminally were reading my mind or you read my article from this weekend, which was titled Down to the Wire, Greece, the Global Economy, and the Gold Cartel, because that's where we sit as we stand right now. Greece is done. Yes, they defaulted already. Everyone knows that they defaulted last week on a measly $300 million interest payment. And it's quite clear that where we stand right now, there's not a chance in hell of any kind of deal because no one wants it. And frankly, I was reading an article by Miss Shidlock who said that, Greece has played Germany like a violin, basically pretending they want a new deal so they can take all their money out of the banks, which they've done. And I think that, within possibly by this weekend, I think the whole thing is going to blow sky high. And as for the global economy, you're right. As I call them, the last to go markets, the Dow and gold are still being manipulated, but everything else is being lost, from commodities, which are almost at the 2008 low as we speak, to currencies, and of course to global economic activity, which couldn't be worse. It's certainly never been worse in our lifetime. So it's only a matter of time before economic Mother Nature finally overwhelms the last remaining defenses and plunges us into the next 2008, which will be far worse than 2008 because there'll be no way to get out of it.
Yeah, well, it certainly does look like it's coming down to the wire here, and it's just spectacular. Greece currency controls, capital controls. Is there anything left to control? It looks like everybody's pulled their money out. What surprised me, Andy, is that Bitcoin hasn't gone through the moon, hasn't gone through the roof.
Really? I really couldn't care less about Bitcoin. In fact, I saw an article from Zero Hedge the other day saying Bitcoin spikes because of fears of what's going on in Greece. And I'm going, well, first of all, it went from 230 to 250. I don't know if I'd call that a spike.
Yeah.
And second of all, the reasoning was because it's a non-fiat currency. Oh, really? So Bitcoin, which really isn't even anything, is spiking, but gold and silver, which are the ultimate non-fiat currencies, are being held down with the same algorithms at the same times a day during these dire circumstances, despite record global demand and plunging mining supply and plunging inventories. Now, I don't even really care about Bitcoin. I have nothing to say about it at this point. It's not money. It's a speculation. Perhaps it goes up. Perhaps it goes down. Perhaps the technology works. Perhaps it doesn't. I really don't care. But what matters, what I'm more concerned about is when the real money, gold and silver, breaks out from the cartel's clutches. Because there is no data out there that could even remotely prove that anything other than that there is record global demand right now, and that's with weakness in the Western world, but record global demand coming from the East, which is offsetting it. And I wrote an article yesterday. Mining implosion approaches DEFCON 1. We're at the point where there's no doubt in my mind we've already reached peak gold. In fact, Goldman Sachs even said we've reached peak gold. And I'm not talking about peak gold if gold goes to $5,000 an ounce. I'm talking about anywhere near these levels or even double these levels. That's it for gold production. And we know that the inventory has been drained. That's the only reason that there's the paper price hasn't gone up more. Because the GLD, if people haven't been watching, since 2013, the 2 years since those big attacks, the price of gold has been $1,200 roughly for those 2 years, and GLD has lost half of its inventory. Okay, and the COMEX, of course, whether the numbers are right or not, they're reporting an all-time low level of inventory of gold, worth a measly $400 or $500 million. And of course, the Shanghai Gold Exchange is reporting record withdrawals, more than 2013, more than 2014. In fact, we're on a pace to destroy those records. And now that in India, they're getting somewhat more liberal with gold, you're seeing record imports. And who knows what well, not record, but dramatically higher imports. And who knows what the black market is. So everywhere across the world, the intensity of the supply demand tightening in gold and silver is coming to a head. And as I wrote, we are coming down to the wire. There's no coming back from this. This time around, all the dead cat bounces and oil PPT, pushes up in oil, they're done. Base metals are crashing. All other commodities are crashing. Oil is going to top out here at 60, and keep going down. And it's just going to destroy a global economy, which is already in the throes of its worst recession ever, back to the 1920s and 30s.
Yeah, it's really looking bleak. There was that article recently that said we're in a repeat of 1937. Bank of America said this, no less.
That's right.
I take it pretty seriously. It's looking like it to me.
Yeah, what they were saying was the last time that the Fed their balance sheet was 25% of GDP was 1937, which was right in the aftermath of the post 1929 money printing orgy, just like we're in the aftermath of the post 2008 money printing orgy. Only this time around, we have $18 trillion of debt and another $5 trillion off balance sheet, and all these hundreds of trillions of unfunded liabilities, and we've lost our manufacturing base. So you can't even compare them. Plus, the GDP now is fraudulent because they now they just 2 years ago they added a whole bunch of stuff to GDP that don't produce revenues or don't produce really anything, simply to make debt to GDP look lower. So we have the same amount of Fed holdings compared to GDP, except GDP is overstated. And of course, the entire nation's financial and economic stability is dramatically worse than it was in 1937. But what Bank of America was saying was, after that happened, all else equal, forgetting rigged markets, forgetting valuations, the Dow plunged by 50% right after that. And what happened to gold? Well, the government revalued it from $20 to $35 an ounce. And mining stocks were the best performing asset in the entire market. Not that I expect them to be now, but that's what Bank of America was talking about.
Yeah, and history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, as Mark Twain said. And look, it's going to happen this time. They've managed to stave it off for a lot of years here, but we're getting down to it now, right? It's just not going to keep going this way, that's for sure. And you better be ready for it, because there's not much longer to go here.
Yeah, I mean, it was always about, it was never a matter of will it happen? It was a matter of the how and when. That's all. I mean, we're all amazed on our side of the fence here how long they've prolonged the relative stability, though I can't emphasize enough. It's only, a secular Americans and maybe Brits think, oh, well, our stock markets are higher and our governments are reporting, better than other places. Although in the UK, they're reporting GDP of like 0.3% as well. But everywhere else in the world, you've seen massive inflation. The average currency is down 40% since the Fed decided to start printing money like crazy in late 2011, when everything was falling apart and they had their AAA credit rating stripped and gold was hitting an all-time high. That's when they started Operation Twist, and when they did QE3, and then they did in April 2013 their closed door meeting with Obama and the too big to fail banks, and they started smashing gold, et cetera, et cetera. I call that the point of no return. Since that has happened, the whole world has fallen apart. The only thing that hasn't fallen apart are, as I say, the last to go markets, like the Dow Jones Propaganda Average, which is relentlessly supported every second of every day. But they're losing the war across the board. I mean, the CRB index is about to cross through its spike 2008 bottom low. Think about that. We're told that we're in a recovery. Back then, that was deer in headlights, the worst economic situation anyone can remember. It was on a par of September 12, 2011. 2001, it was that bad back then. And still the CRB commodity index is about to go through that bottom. In fact, most commodities have already gone through. The only reason it hasn't is because of the aforementioned oil PPT, which has taken oil from 42 up to 60, which still stinks, but that's the only reason the CRB is not through its lows. So they have lost the battle of the actual economic activity and the actual oversupply of commodities across the board, which is, by the way, the the biggest supporter of emerging markets economies in the world is commodity prices. And then, of course, is these currencies. The average currency down 40% in 4 years. But the average BRIC currency, and that doesn't include China because they're pegged to the dollar, is down 90%. These are the amazing economies. Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa, they're leading the world. They're the global growth engines. Their currencies are down 90% on average against the dollar. Brazil reported this morning its largest ever plunge in retail sales. And these are the leaders of the world. And by the way, another economy which stands to collapse as commodity prices fall further. So again, there is nowhere that the powers that be are, quote, winning other than in, as I call these last to go markets. They will decidedly be spectacularly defeated in the gold and silver markets. And as for the stock markets, well, either they're going to hyperinflate like in Weimar, Germany, or for instance, Venezuela right now, or they're going to collapse like in 2008 or 1929. Take your pick. The only question again is the when and how.
Yeah, the when and how. That is what it all comes down to. And so Donald Trump enters the presidential contest yesterday, and this is life imitating reality TV, right?
Well, I'll put it this way, and I've told you about my voting history, from just voting for people on principle like Ross Perot, right, then starting to just voting against people. Like I voted for Kerry to get Bush out, and then I voted for Obama to get the Bushites out, and then I voted for Gary Johnson because I couldn't take any of them. And now I'm on the verge. Now this time I'm pretty much not going to vote for anyone unless Ron Paul comes out of retirement. But you think about Donald Trump, who I despise as a person, and he's clearly a far weaker business person, based on all the failures he's had than people think, because he's been boosted by all this real estate goosing from the Federal Reserve. But if I had to choose between Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and Jeb Bush, I'd take Donald Trump in a second.
Yeah. Hey, but at least it's entertainment, so might be going down the drain. Remember, Aaron Clary, enjoy the decline. It's all going to go down the tubes. You might as well have a few good laughs on the way down, right?
Yeah. I mean, you got to enjoy life as best you can. Yeah. And if there's one person I've met in the world who's good at that, it's him.
Yeah, right. I mean, that press conference yesterday was just a hoot. I really had, I just laughed my ass off watching it.
Which one is this? Was it Hillary?
Trump's press conference, and he's going to make those guys squirm, which is the best part. I don't know how long he'll be in it.
He'll certainly make them spend more money, that's for sure. And, that's just more, lobbying, more control of the politicians by the lobbyers. Because, if he wants to throw his billions into the circle, then that means Hillary and Jeb are going to have to, pony up more trillions themselves. And let's face it, I mean, everyone else is a sideshow. This is Clinton Bush 2 or Clinton Bush 3, whatever number it's going to be. And anyone else who comes in is just throwing, good money after bad.
Yeah. Oh, it's just, it's going to be funny as hell. And he's just, he's got a knack for just really putting it on the line. I think it's just going to be a lot of what was going to be a really boring, aggravating, annoying, and just sad situation is gonna provide some entertainment value now. So that's the way I just look at it. Entertainment.
I mean, let's face it. Again, for all the things we say about Donald Trump, and I mean, I'm from New York. I've followed him as closely as anybody. The things he says, the dumb things he says, and the smart things he does. For instance, he was the guy. There's no doubt that on The Apprentice, he was the guy who originated the concept of calling up companies and saying, would you like to be featured on my show? Like, we'll do a show where it's about, doing a product for Levi's jeans, and then Levi's jeans pays for the show. I mean, brilliant. Yeah. I mean, you see it everywhere in entertainment, everywhere in the economy now. And that's something that he did. So look, from between all the moronic things he says and does and all of his failures, he's had a lot of successes, and he's a pretty smart guy. And if he actually got to the point where he could make a debate of it, he can really, hurt the credibility of his competitors as badly as people can hurt his. And it'll only, be worse for America for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, look, the guy is really cutting through the political BS, through the sugar-coated nonsense, and he's not focus group driven. I think he's resonating with a certain portion of the American public, and that's cause for concern for the rest of them. The fact that he can do it and that they'll have to address some issues that they don't want to address. This is great.
Well, that said, of course, as the other side of the coin is, people say, well, these billionaires, they do what they want. They don't care. And in the case of Ross Perot, that was exactly right. If somehow miraculously he was to have been elected, which would never have happened because, he would have no political support. I mean, he really was kind of a pariah in the political circle. But if he did happen to get elected, he would have wrought havoc because he couldn't care less. Then on the other hand, you have a guy like Michael Bloomberg, who's equally rich, probably richer than Ross Perot was in current dollars, but he just became a political stooge.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the king of New York, and the best way to do that is just to do what the politicos tell me to do. Kind of like in The Good Wife when they tell Alicia to quit for the good of the party.
Yeah, well, hey, and you know what? I think that Bloomberg could wind up being back again too. Interestingly enough, because I don't think Hillary's going to be electable, but we're not here to talk about politics.
Right.
Just the spectacle of Donald Trump is really what I was referring to.
It lightened up our otherwise horrible conversation, and we haven't even gotten to the Fed or the mining business or any of that stuff.
What mining business? Is there a mining business still?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday's article, people should read it. The one I read yesterday, it's called Mining Implosion Approaches DEFCON 1. And, I'll give all the credit in the world to Steve St. Angelo of SRS Rocco. He's the best mining analyst out there. Take all of the Wall Street analysts combined, and they couldn't do what he does, which is put out the truth. And in his last article, he wrote of how in the first quarter, despite, everything, despite the fall in oil prices, which, of course, has since rebounded, the silver industry primary miners, their cost of production was over $17 an ounce. And that's with all of the cost cuts. They've cut the cost of the bone, and they're still at $17 an ounce. And now oil is going up. And of course, there's a whole slew of other things that are conspiring to destroy them, particularly the fact that their reserves continue to plummet and they haven't found anything in years. But worse yet, he claimed that half of all the revenues of the primary silver miners, and these are the biggest, best silver miners in the world, not the crap, the little tiny mom and pops that do most of the production. But he's saying that half of their revenues were byproduct revenues from lead and zinc and copper. Has anyone seen lead, zinc, and copper? They're in free fall right now. And based on what's going on with the global economy, and particularly like the inventories of copper, I have no doubt that it's in play that they go back to their 2008 lows, which for copper is $1.50, and for lead and zinc is about 50 cents a pound. And you talk about that. That'll destroy everything. That'll destroy every silver miner. I mean, people don't even remember. Their memories of 2008 are so shallow. They don't remember that the two largest mining companies in the world, BHP and Rio Tinto, were on the verge of bankruptcy themselves in early 2009 because of these things. Let alone Silver Wheaton, the greatest company. Silver Wheaton violated its covenants for that very reason, because the revenue streams that they own of silver were related to zinc and lead mines, which were being shut down. And that whole cycle is going to start up again right now. And guess what? 2/3 of this world's silver production comes as byproduct from lead, zinc, and copper mines. So again, if you think that the peak of gold production has passed, I think silver may not have peaked yet. It's probably right about there. It may go up another year or so. But I think that we're going to have a dramatic, spectacular fall if base metal prices continue to go down. And again, we're at the lowest level of inventory we've ever had in the world. Of gold and silver. So we're talking about the perfect storm of supply and demand meeting each other at a time where the world is falling apart and faith in fiat currencies is on the verge of collapse, starting with the euro. And I'm telling you, the only reason things aren't worse there, and believe me, they're bad. I mean, the Greek 2-year bonds are at 30% right now. The PIGS bonds yields are exploding up right now. I mean, the only reason is because stock manipulation has made it appear that it's not so bad, but they're going to get swamped by all the things that were there back in 2008 and back in 2011 and then some, and they're all going to leave the euro. There's no reason for there to be a euro currency. It hurts everybody. And once Greece leaves, Spain is going to leave, France is going to leave, Italy is going to leave, all those emerging market countries are going to leave. Everyone's going to rethink the concept of global trade when they realize that it's nothing but it benefits only the policymakers and creates these massive currency wars, which are destroying the people.
Yeah, and that was another thing that Trump talked about was basically globalism and jobs being sucked out of the U.S., the death of the middle class. I think
well,
that's
that's Ross Perot's thing.
Yeah,
and again, the giant sucking sound that he was talking about. It's not just because of NAFTA and GATT and all those things. It's not just because of trade agreements. Those trade agreements which benefited, of course, only the politicians and the shareholders of these big corporations, were they just accelerated this trend overseas. But the fact was the jobs were going to go to China anyway because they have more people and they can do things just as competitively. It's a competitive world. Those trade agreements only made things worse. And now, they're talking about this Trans-Pacific secret thing, which may or may not pass. We're not even allowed to know what it's about. It's probably more of the same. And who knows if they'll do it even if it doesn't pass. The fact is, you're going to see more and more shady deals and more desperate things. And all of them are going to hurt the people who are going to continue to revolt financially and socially.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. I mean, this is ripe for lots of civil unrest, lots of more Baltimores out there. We can only hazard a guess what's going to happen here, Andy, but it ain't going to be pretty. Anyway, Andy, we will be talking to you next week. Find Andy at milesfranklin.com. Subscribe to his daily missive and his audio blog. He's got a double installment today because there's so much going on. milesfranklin.com. And check out our site, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Make sure you take a look at all the articles that our webmaster, Stefan, works tirelessly to bring you. It's really quite amazing, the job that he does. We're talking websites from around the globe, bringing you the truth, not the stuff that you're seeing on the mainstream media, which is just a whitewash and just an extension of the powers that be. Financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Check it out. It's really what you want to see, the stuff that you need to know. Andy, we will talk to you next week.
Look forward to it. It could be a crazy one.
It will be, no doubt.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.